G'day everyone, this is Darren with the Soarcast. Today we've got a great show. We're interviewing Chris Strasbaugh of Ohio State University, and we're looking at the images that can be produced using multiple images from drones. We'll learn more about that in the Soarcast, so join us today. Thanks for joining the Soarcast, where we talk about drones, manned aircraft, and satellites, and how they relate to geospatial products found on the SOAR platform. Welcome everyone, and welcome to the Soarcast. I'm Darren, and today we're talking to Chris Strasbaugh of Ohio State University. And we're talking about, of course, drones, but we're talking about the images and what you can do with those images that come from your drone leading on. So Chris, it's really good to have you. Where are we speaking to you from today?
Well, right now I'm in very snowy Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. So it's a nice evening here where you're probably feeling much better than I am.
That's true. I won't tell you what the temperature is outside, but needless to say, it's technically bikini weather. So not for myself, but it is quite warm out. But it's good to have you. I might lead in a little bit with how we met, how we hooked up, and why we're talking today. So back in November of 2019, we released SOAR Plus, which is our map image and raster image sharing platform within SOAR. And at the show, this was the commercial UAV show in Las Vegas, I met Chris, and Chris comes from, of course, Ohio State University. It's quite interesting. I did a little bit of research on your background, Chris. Maybe it'd be good to give us your title, what you do at the university, and specifically, how does that relate to drones?
Perfect. So I've been at the Ohio State University for almost 4 years now and have been inside the Knowlton School, which is architecture, landscape architecture, and city and regional planning. So a very creative place and is very focused on location and place and space and very different scales as well. They didn't have a drone program when I arrived, and I just kind of lucked that I had some photo background. Also love technology, and I love those questions that come up where a faculty member might say, wouldn't it be great, and in this case, wouldn't it be great to be able to capture some site images from above so the students could get a different scale, a different perspective that they wouldn't normally get. And luckily, after doing some digging, I'm like, I think I can do one better, and all of a sudden I can create maps that are accurate and geo-referenced, but I can also create those 3D models, since I know they all work inside this 3D arena where students are generating 3D models from at least 2 of the 3 programs. And so picked up a pilot's license, and at that point a Mavic Pro, just to kind of start doing our testing. And in the last 2.5 years, we've been doing sites that vary in scale from an acre to a 2.5 mile road corridor to study poverty disparity and transportation networks, starting to work in multispectral and thermal. So it's really taken off. My role there was the digital resources archivist and curator, and because of the success, we also have just recently escalated this program to the College of Engineering level, and I'll be taking on educational technologist next month as well. So it's a lot of exciting things that have been going on.
Yeah, well, no, that's good, Chris, and it gives us a bit of, I guess, a bit of perspective about how you came into it, because Like I said, I did a bit of research kind of on your academic profile, and I can just share with the audience. Here's some of the titles of things that Chris has authored or contributed, been a part of. Is a presenter for a presentation, Marrying Drones and VR/AR with Pix4D in the Classroom. How we harness the potential of UAV imagery in the classroom through VR and other technologies, moving from drones to AR, VR in the classroom, and the list goes on. So it's interesting. You came from purely the photographic perspective. I know you have a bachelor's in photography, and with that technical knowledge, you've really sort of had leveraged that technical knowledge in drones. It's interesting also that you have used multiple platforms. Can you just list the drone platforms that you've worked with?
So the drone platforms that I've worked with, so we started out with the DJI Mavic Pro, the first gen. Then we bought a second one and hacked that one to try to work with a FLIR Duo R. We picked up a third Mavic Pro, the Alpine version, and then we took our very first one and sent it to Centera to add the NDVI sensor so we could start doing some ag work. I've been playing with the Parrot Anafi thermal. That we'll save that discussion for another day. And ultimately, we are now moving towards the Wingtra for both RGB and multispectral for some of our large scale sites. So touching a lot of different things. I've also flown the M200 and 210. I haven't met a drone I haven't enjoyed.
And I don't know if it was a link associated with a paper you were on, but have you done anything with the sort of cage or indoor drones, the Helios drone?
I haven't done those. We've been starting to play with some of our indoor. We had a symposium actually a few weeks back where it was kind of this idea of the anxiety of the smart future. And so the original idea was they wanted to have a drone flying indoors over the crowd area while the presenter was presenting. So they also wanted that live stream. So we picked up a Mavic Mini because of the cages, and found ways of hacking that to do live streaming, which turns out that Zoom, the web conferencing software, is absolutely amazing and was able to stream from the iPad as a screen capture. So that Mavic Mini wasn't designed for it, but it definitely worked. We didn't do it during the presentation because, believe it or not, it makes a lot of noise when you're flying indoors during presentations. So we found other ways to get it to work. But no, any of these indoor caged ones have a lot of relevance because we spend a lot of time flying indoors for doing some photography of student presentations and stuff.
Wow, sounds like you're touching on quite a few bases. I think, yeah, what I had in mind was that we would. I'm going to draw a bit on your photography knowledge in terms of image acquisition and quality, and even using some of the desktop image stitching orthomosaic software. And then we're also going to look at ultimately the products, the end game. What do we do with those images, and how do we get value out of those? So
definitely,
I think most of the people here have heard about, of course, the Mavic, the Mini Mavic, the Parrot, Anafi, even the M200 and M210 large commercial sized drones. The Wingtra is quite interesting. Just tell me what is that drone? What's it like?
So the Wingtra drone solves a lot of our problems. So it is a vertical takeoff and landing fixed wing drone. I have been in the market for a fixed wing because of the scale. Architecture, that program really focused on small scale, just site specific, so maybe a couple of acres or a few acres max. Landscape architecture starts getting bigger, where their sites can actually take place out in the fields, around water, and it can be upwards of 1,000 acres. And then when you start talking about city and regional planning, which is our first big projects, were actually through that section. Those can be 1,000, 2,000 long corridors, and also in an urban environment. So you couldn't really do it with a multi-rotor because you would just have too many flights. The battery just drains too fast. You couldn't necessarily do something like an EB, a standard fixed wing, because first of all, the controlled crash landing, there's just going to be too much wear and tear on those, and not to mention when you're in an urban environment, it's just not safe trying to find a landing pad for a regular fixed wing. And then so the vertical takeoff and landing is kind of marrying the best of both worlds. I looked at the Firefly 6. In fact, one of our researchers over in anthropology used a couple of those down in Belize for a deforestation and slash and burn project he was doing. And while he liked it, he says it might not be necessarily the best tool. Wingtra just came in. I saw them also at Commercial UAV, and then also they did a demo at one of our very difficult sites, a partnership we have with Columbus Metro Parks with a converted quarry, including large scale quarry walls and lakes and forested areas, and it tackled 425 acres with 2 centimeter accuracy, a really small ground sampling that we haven't even come close to, and it did in 2 flights in like 2 hours. So that kind of got me hooked, got me sold on this idea that the major limitation of that drone is just how far can I see it, and it just happens to be orange and a bit larger, so I can see it even further than say some of our smaller drones. So the Wingtra one, I'm really looking forward to finally getting it in my hands. We already have projects, especially dealing with agriculture. And our landscape architecture is very tied to changes over time and tied to a growing season. So my hope is to actually probably do about 5 to 6 flights over the grow season of a number of different spaces in Ohio and maybe some surrounding areas. Like there's a site in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as well that I'm looking at. So the Wingtra just had a great sense of scale. It's a very smart and intelligent. It also keeps the payload in an enclosed payload section, and it also handles wind, even though it's a giant, basically almost a fiberglass-like surface. It's very intelligent to turn the proper way into the wind so that it can kind of cut through when it's landing or taking off. But it's definitely something to see. I can't wait to get it in my hands.
Oh, that's awesome. When you threw that stat out, 425 acres and 2 batteries, I did. Gosh, it was only 160 acres with my with a Phantom 3, and that was 4 batteries. Actually, it was only 120 acres, and so I'm thinking 4 times, roughly 4. That's 16 batteries, and all the all the lag time in between. You're going to be looking at changes in the light. Your tablet's probably going to die in the meantime. So yeah, when you want to scale up, I think that certainly the fixed wing and the VTOL are gonna definitely take care of those problems. Just quick question: what do they put a retail price on the Wingtra or a ballpark price?
So again, this is one of those areas where I am very lucky to be in an educational institution because of usually a good discount. But you're going to be looking with their 42 megapixel standard Sony payload somewhere in the ballpark of like 30 to 36. I just don't know what the discount exactly was that I got. They also have a 24 megapixel version, but me that out the door, we're also getting the one with the PPK as well. So I didn't want to start marching around 425 acres laying down ground points. So PPK to the rescue for that one.
All right, so Chris, you're well versed in the field of photography, and have been doing, and even you were in self-employed or running your own business in that space, and so you've got a real intimacy with. Thanks, laptop. Anyhow, it's my laptop speaking to me. Anyway. So we want to explore a little bit about your knowledge of photogrammetry, and I understand photogrammetry is making measurements from photography, but it expands further into drones and the photos that they take. So, can you tell us what is photogrammetry?
Well, let me boil it down, because oftentimes a lot of the questions I get are from people that have absolutely no idea. They might see the end product and they're like, whoa, how did you do that? And so basically what photogrammetry is just taking a bunch of photos that have a very strategic overlap. And so the software at the end basically takes a whole bunch of photos, kind of lays them out where they should go, and says, okay, this little spot right here, I saw that spot in multiple different photos, and then it kind of glues those together. And so basically from one photograph and then a combination of multiple photographs is creating one large photograph by merging them all together using those common points. Now, it's not just about getting a really big photo. It also allows you to do cool things when you start adding that location information in as well. All of a sudden, you're able to measure things because it knew where the drone was, it knew where the picture was, and you're able to say that this fence line, just like I was measuring in my backyard this weekend, I know that my fence is 120 feet, and I'm going to need this many pickets in order for me to replace that fence. But the other cool thing about the software, like there's a lot of different software products out there that do this magic work. I use Pix4D, which is pretty much the industry standard, though Drone Deploy does some great work, as well as a few other groups as well. But not only is it creating a geo-referenced map or large photograph, but it also creates a 3D model. And for us, that's been incredibly useful, as we're able to put that in the hands of students so that they can actually plop their project on. So let's say they were doing a downtown Los Angeles project in the tar pits. All of a sudden, they have an accurate model of that site that they can actually design to the topography of. So basically, you're just taking a bunch of photos, but the software, using the location of the drone, is able to put those all together, and you can create measurements, you can do 3D modeling, kind of the sky's the limit, especially when you start adding different data layers like multispectral or thermal. So simple as just taking a bunch of photos and gluing them together is really what photogrammetry is all about.
You just got the thumbs up from the drone father. He's our producer, and he's sitting in the room.
Yes.
And I'd like to say the light bulb went off. Dan and I have similar experience in using drones and mapping, and he's done more commercial work than I have. But if you ask us to explain it, we would. We're very good at putting people to sleep. So thanks for that, Chris.
No problem.
So going forward, the standard for these images, these orthomosaics, or even these surface models, or multispectral imagery, is the GeoTIFF format.
Correct.
Which is a great format. Obviously, it suits its purpose. It's the file that those applications that you mentioned, Drone Deploy, Pix4D, Open Drone Map, whatever the tool is, that's the output. That's the standard output. You're uniquely in the data presentation space, going off your profile. So you're well versed in that. But these images, I just want to get a sense of how you would use those images, but I also want to share with the audience how you got to that point. So obviously you've spent a lifetime in this space, but even from your start of working with drones to where you are
Mm-hmm.
now, where are you using those output images, and how long did it take you to sort of work out a method?
Well, this is a great question because I knew the photography, I knew a little bit about the flying, but as projects started coming, one of the problems that we started discovering is how much data this takes. So, for instance, when I was doing some of our starter projects, it was only 10 acres. It wasn't that many photos, and so it outputs for a geotiff maybe around a gig, and everyone can manage really a gig even from a laptop. Well, fast forward a little bit, and all of a sudden, when we were doing 2.4 mile corridor at 160 feet with a Mavic One, all of a sudden these files are getting into 4 to 8 gigs for that, and then we're merging different projects together, and it's becoming a major drain on the system. Let alone, we were working with one of the community groups, and they're like, oh, we'd love to be able to have these resources that we could reference. And you give them a 8 to 10 gig file, and all of a sudden things just shut down. They don't know how to work with it. So geotiff is a really powerful tool, but it has some major limitations as well. So we've been kind of looking for these types of solutions, especially because a lot of what we do is not just working with inside our research groups and inside with students, but we're also working with outside research groups, whether it's community groups or Metro Park systems. So this kind of sent us down a path of, at first we were just sharing geotiffs and hoping that they could open it. And then that's kind of where I ran into to SOAR, and I like to say that I saw something in SOAR that was different than what it was maybe designed for. Specifically, this could be the big solution of being able to have a online platform that was much more open than the cloud storage that Pix4D provides. But I could send out a link to the Milo Grogan community group, but at the same time, all the other groups, and they could all go in and start accessing the data, zooming in, seeing details, and measuring. Geotiffs are still a problem, but at the same time, there's different applications. There's something from Safe that allows it to go into either JPEG 2 or what is it? What is it that you guys like? The ECW? Is that the format that has been so successful?
It's a great format, but it has commercial implications, I guess. So GeoTIFF being
Yes.
kind of open source works for everyone. That's why the software app companies like to use it. ECW is proprietary, and it requires off-the-shelf software to convert it to that format. So you're looking at it. Yeah.
Again, I love being in the educational space, but at the same time, some of these software, first of all, getting it into a format that could be digestible to your clients is absolutely huge. But at the same time, JPEG 2 is a very interesting format as well. It's compressed data like an ECW, but at the same time, it also has the georeferencing built in as well. So that's an area that's going to be next on our list. But I also love this idea of where we're playing right now is this idea of data stacking. So you have the one field of wildflowers that is going to be a 3-year project. We're going to go out and fly it 6 times a year using multispectral and RGB and thermal. And so all of a sudden you have all of these different maps showing different types of things over time. And the only place I've been able to see where you can really stack things well, you can't do that in Pix4D's cloud. You can't do that in Drone Deploy's cloud, at least not yet, is in SOAR. And being able to see those layers and being able to select the layers. has been super useful. So next step is for us to see which format we like to go out first. But yeah, GeoTIFF are very unwieldy. You really need an online platform that can host these, and more importantly, that you can actually share and exchange these data, no matter how large the data set is.
Well, thanks, Chris, for that. It's you've given me a lot of ideas in terms of things that we could do with a platform, and I would be very keen to see multiple data sets. So we're using RGB cameras, and there's a number of formats you can get from that in terms of stitched imagery or your orthomosaic, your photograph. You can get a terrain model and so terrain being the ground surface, but also a surface model. So the things like the trees and the buildings, you can get the elevations from that. But and you can also do what I call visual NDVI, and so probably another topic for another discussion. But
of course,
normalized density vegetation index. What does that mean? Well, it's a way whereby you can use the infrared and the red and green spectrum, visible or parts of the light spectrum to derive the relative plant health. And so you can also do that with RGB, but it's not using the infrared, and so you're not measuring how much infrared light is being reflected by the plants. So it's a little bit of a cheat. But anyways, when you get into the multispectral, you're capturing that light that the human eye can't see, and the combinations or algorithms are really sort of endless in terms of what you can derive from those. So I've seen it done for things like vegetation typing, species identification. It's also used. I'm a geologist, so it's used even it works well in the remote sensing space. So from satellite imagery, certain minerals will reflect in certain in certain paths of the light spectrum. So you can actually do mineralogy from space, if you will. And we have one of our clients using. She's mapping with a drone in the mining regions of northern Canada, and she's actually using the terrain models for texture mapping. So because they're capturing every 4 centimeters or every 2 centimeters, she's able to pick out subtle variations in the rock surface that are telling her where mineral lineations are, or where a quartz vein is, and that type of thing. And this is all on the hillside, on the side of a hillside that she's not going to walk up. So I think thanks for pointing out that the actual data that's underlying these images is in a way unlimited. Furthermore, if you open up the light spectrum, so you go into the multispectral cameras, you can see you can just do so much more. So one thing I wanted to just get your knowledge on was compression of images, and just to highlight the benefit of say a GeoTIFF image. So I know that the image there's things called lossless compression. So can you tell us what happens when you go from say a TIFF image to a JPG image?
So the JPEG 2 is specifically designed as the lossless compressed. So it doesn't. So originally, the JPEG format just threw out data for the compression. So once you threw out data, you could never get it back. Whereas a JPEG 2 or even a TIFF lossless compression, they use algorithms to know what pieces you pretty much threw out, and then that way it can reconstruct the data after the fact as well. So lossless just means that you're never losing the data, you're just temporarily hiding it from it, so that way when you need it again, you can just kind of pull it back out with using specific software. JPEG 2 hasn't seen as wide of an adoption as expected, considering the format was called JPEG 2000. And here we are in 2020, and we're still looking for a wider adoption of the JPEG 2. But that doesn't mean that it's any less useful. I really think that it has some potentials in this space because it is a pretty sizable compression without losing the data. And it also sits in a wider area of being able to be accessible in Photoshop, for instance. Now, saving it is a different story.
Okay.
There's still some things that we're
Chris.
working out.
That,
Both.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's that's right. Sometimes the audio, I don't know, it's recording everything, but sometimes I don't hear the audio. So I didn't mean to jump in.
No
thanks.
problem.
Yeah. Well, so thanks, Chris, for for giving us a lot of I guess insight and technical knowledge about images captured by drones. What can be done with those images? What are the applications we use? And furthermore, how do we get value out of those? How do we deliver those images to people, or what's our target audience? So we don't always let our guests off that easy. Sometimes we like to have a little bit of fun with our guests. Sometimes we do a bit of trivia. And knowing your background in photography, I came up with a little bit of Wikipedia knowledge. So no stress.
Okay.
You're not on
Let's see what I can do.
You're not on the spot. Do you know which company developed the TIFF format?
Honestly, I'm gonna stick with the Eastman Kodak company.
Well, I think that was a good guess. For those of you who don't know what Kodak is, it's a company that was in photography for a long time.
So old school.
The company's name, actually, the company was later acquired by Adobe, but the original company's name was Aldis Corporation in 1986. Well,
really?
Yes. But they didn't kick on. They were acquired by Adobe shortly thereafter. Another trivia question on the TIFF format. What type of equipment did the TIFF format originally serve?
Oh. Well, I can't go for the obvious. Obviously, you'll want to say digital cameras.
You're close.
Is it going to be video?
Very well. It's more in the digital photography. It was scanners. So in the
that makes a lot of sense.
In the beginning, everybody had their own proprietary format, and this was the one that seemed to work the best.
I'm 0 for 2 so far.
Yeah. Fair enough. This is an easy one. What type of image compression does the TIFF format involve? Lossless, or I don't know. What's the opposite of lossless?
Lossy is what I'm going to say. Lossless, and that's why it's a preferred archive. But also because you didn't know what the other term was, so that made it easier for me.
Yeah, they're going to be looking a lot longer for Alex Trebek's replacement. It won't be me. Trivia question about TIFF files. Can TIFF support layered images?
Can you repeat the question, Alex?
That's fine. Can TIFFs support layered images?
Yes, it can.
Okay, TIFF images for 400. What does TIFF stand for?
Oh no! My cutoff for remembering this is about 7 p.m. my time. So could you help me with this one?
Okay, we will move on to the multiple choice. Does TIFF stand for?
Okay, perfect.
Does TIFF stand for tagged image file format or thousands of incompatible file formats?
The second one sounds appealing, but I'm gonna go with my gut and go with A. Sounds perfect.
Very well. Okay, this is a bit of this is a multiple answer question, meaning if you throw out one of them, you'll get it right. So GeoTIFF files are TIFF files that have a georeferenced element that allows them to be displayed and correctly placed on a map. What is some of that geospatial information? What types of geospatial information would be included?
First of all, your Latin longitude, but also the altitude. So it's XYZ.
Okay, yeah, you definitely got that. Other acceptable answers would include projection system, coordinate system, the ellipsoid, and the datums.
So I picked the easy ones.
Which is all you need to know. Okay. Next trivia question. Who developed GeoTIFFs? And I'll give you a hint.
Oh.
It was your countrymen. My countrymen, too.
I have no idea.
GeoTIFFs were originally...
Really intelligent people.
That's true. GeoTIFFs were originally developed by NASA, specifically in the Jet Propulsion Laboratory Division.
This makes so much sense.
They
deal with a lot of imagery data.
Of course, yeah. Okay, in what year did the OGC, which is the Open Space Geospatial Consortium, publish the GeoTIFF standard? Was it A, 2005, B, 1995, C, 2009, or C, September 14th, 2019?
We are going to go with A.
Well,
I forgot what all the answers were, but A sounds great.
Okay, well, according to Wikipedia, I should have said which is, well, I think it's a bad question because actually it's probably the latest standard, which would be September 14th, 2019. So I suppose...
you were pretty specific. I should have just gone with that.
Well, aren't you glad you're not in... You're not a student anymore. Nothing worse.
Yes, because I would be hoping for a really good curve on this exam.
Okay, this might be a bit of a. There's something called cloud optimized GeoTIFFs, which is a recent, I guess, phenomenon that I wasn't aware of until about 11 p.m. last night. What is the purpose?
Okay.
What is the purpose of cloud optimized GeoTIFFs?
Well, my guess is so that it performs better in the cloud, so it's probably better with bandwidth and artifacting.
You're quite spot on. So one of the things that we've been, I don't know, discussing and sort of on the subject was what do you use to visualize these GeoTIFFs? And so your standard GIS desktop software, your QGIS, your ArcGIS, those types of things, they do that quite readily because that's what they were designed for. But I guess the issue was that they were having issues displaying. You can't use a browser to display a GeoTIFF. If you try to open a GeoTIFF in a browser, it might. I haven't tried it. Might show you the TIFF file. Because many image editing formats actually can open a GeoTIFF file, but they don't have it anywhere on the Earth. So the purpose of optimized GeoTIFF, cloud optimized GeoTIFFs was, specifically for handling on the cloud, probably optimizing them for bandwidth, you're right, and then also correctly placing them on the Earth. So that is the end of the trivia, Chris. I didn't keep score, and don't feel bad. It's all stuff I learned, but it's always fun to test a bit of knowledge. And in fact, that's probably the most academic and technical
cloud optimized. So this is something new for me.
Yeah, certainly. So I just want to say thanks, Chris, from SOAR, and thanks to the work you're doing at OSU, and also thanks for being an early adopter, as well as a bit of an advocate.
My pleasure.
For SOAR Plus, and some of the good news that will be, I guess, rolling out in the platform is the current methodology for sharing images on SOAR Plus is sharing a username. Is basically you share a link and then the user logs into the system, and we're looking at ways to make that public. So even in sort of the academic or public facing space where you're doing work for the general public and they need to see that information, we're looking at ways to just make that information immediately publicly available. So stay tuned to this space. But moving on, Chris.
Well, I'm always happy to help and do anything you guys need.
Very good. Well, moving on, Chris, it's been great having you, and thanks for being part of the SOARcast.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And that's all we have time for today. Tune in to our next SOARcast for more discussion on geospatial products and imagery found on SOAR.